Hi people, this is the Scrutiny. I'm the chair of Now It's Scrutiny, and today we're lucky to have the top man, Chief Executive Jason Rowe, come along to answer some questions for us. Jason, nice to see you. Thanks for giving your time. We got a few questions to ask you. Roz is here from Scrutiny. Unfortunately, the other two could make it. So do you mind if we start alternately and ask you questions?
Of course.
Right, the first question. Can you tell us a little bit about the housing career?
Oh, yes. Well, first, thanks very much for inviting me along, and it's always great to come and speak to you. I know we normally do this in person, but video will suffice.
Yeah.
A little bit about my housing career. Well, it's not overly exciting, so I won't go on for too much about it. But basically, when I was at school, I was harassed into what are you going to do, what are you going to do, what are you going to do? And like most sixth formers, I had absolutely no idea. My parents said go and work in a bank because that's a great job. And I went and worked in Lloyd's Bank in Knightsbridge for 3 months. And as a 19-year-old, I think it was, I ended up crying in my manager's office because I hated it so much. I couldn't stand it. In fact, I used to have this thing where people would say, oh, you must love it. It's a Friday. And I was like, no, I can't stand Fridays because it's only 2 days until Monday again. And then we've got another week. I used to love Thursdays because I was thinking to myself, the weekend's not that far off. Friday was horrible. And I think at that point, you start to think, maybe this is the wrong career for me. This really isn't the right place to be. So I went to a careers library, our local one in Hertfordshire at the time, and they had 2 folders, one called private sector, one called public sector. And I said, I don't want to go near private sector. I can't stand that. I'll go public sector. Went alphabetically through it, looked at environmental health and thought, no, I can't cope with all of that kind of stuff. All of the, I'll be a bit squeamish on that. Turned the next page and it was housing. And they offered an opportunity to go and work with Welwyn Hatfield District Council. Ended up as a sponsored student. Over time, moved to Wales, then worked for Glamorgan and Gwent, as it was, now Link. Then worked for Newydd in the 90s as a housing officer, which probably not that many tenants will remember when I was a housing officer here. Then moved away to family in Swansea, back to Torvine Council, and ended up then as housing director in Newydd in 2003. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow. Well, that was sounds coming from you an easy ride.
It did sound an easy ride, didn't it?
Yes, it did, but
it was horrible.
But you obviously thought that the housing offered you more as far as not just a career, but meeting people.
Yeah, well, I think that was it.
Being stuck in a bank, it's a bit.
In a bank, I was stuck behind a desk, and it was a real paper pushing, press buttons on a, well, probably
yes,
and that was it. Whereas going to work with Welwyn Hatfield Council, you'd go and talk to people and hear about their lives and see what they were doing, and that was so much more engaging and so much more interesting.
Oh, good.
But I really do struggle when people say to me, "Oh, what point did you decide to go into housing?" And it's like, well, I didn't. I fell into it, really.
Yeah. But you stayed there, and look at you now.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for answering that question. Roz is going to ask you the next one.
Hi, Jace.
Hello, Roz.
Hiya. Did you always aspire to be a chief executive, and if so, why?
No, not to start with. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't even aspire to be in housing to start with, so I really didn't know where I was going to go. I think once I'd fallen into the housing sector, I had my dad, his words in the back of my head, which was always, I'll just keep on going up the ladder. You've got to carry on going up the ladder. Whatever you do, just keep on going up the ladder. So I kind of thought that was what I was supposed to do. And my school motto, St. George's School in Harpenden, it was aim higher. So it was always just keep on looking up and carrying on. So I suppose in the back of my mind, the thought was, I keep going, and where does it end? Well, it ends at chief exec, unless you fancy being Minister for Housing or something, which I have no interest in doing at all. Then it's chief exec. So I suppose it was. I've still got my parents' thoughts in the back of my mind of keep going up.
Wise words.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So what does the role of chief executive involve?
Well, everything. Well, I would say everything, wouldn't I? But it's a kind of, an overview of the direction and operation of every part of the organisation, which is a difficult thing to do. As I mentioned, I've always been in the housing side, the housing officer, then a manager, then a director. So suddenly I've got to understand finance and understand development and understand IT and all of that kind of thing. I think the one thing that is important in this role, and you can't do this role if you get this wrong, is not thinking that you can do all of these things. I sit and have chats with Elizabeth Lendrin, the finance director. She knows everything about finance, and I'm not going to sit there and pretend I fully understand every aspect we're talking about.
No.
So you delegate, you trust your staff, you trust the directors, you trust the managers, you trust the frontline staff. Occasionally, I would get asked by our housing officer, for example, what would you do about this case or whatever? And I'd be like, wow, I was a housing officer in the 90s. I can tell you what I'd do, but it would be awful. And I would, if they often talk about back to the floor, I go back to the floor and be a housing officer, I'd probably be dreadful, absolutely dreadful. We've got brilliant frontline staff. They do a fantastic job. My role is enabling them to be able to work their best. And that's what the chief exec bit's about. Not pretending that chief execs used to be called chief housing officer, and that made it sound like you were the best housing officer. You're kidding. I was never the best housing officer. So that's what my role involves, keeping all of that going and keeping all of those different departments going. It's very interesting, but it means you've got to be a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none.
So what are the key things you would like to achieve as a chief executive?
Well, I've always been involved with tenants. I've always loved tenant engagement. I love being involved with tenants. So ultimately, I would like to deliver what tenants want. I mean, that's what the purpose of the organisation is. We're not here to make massive profits and get shareholders to, like private companies and Amazon and take over the world and all of that kind of stuff. No, it's all about being a community housing association and delivering what tenants want. So things that tenants have told me over the years, and you yourselves have told me as well as part of our Scrutiny chats, people want to feel safe in their homes. So that's what I'd want to be able to deliver, that people feel safe and secure in there. People feel they get the support they want. People feel they get the services they want, and they get good services, and they get things resolved when they want things resolved. That people know we're here for the long term, and that their houses are there for the community to be sustainable, for it to last a long time, for people to be living in their homes and thinking, I'm going to be here for ages, I'm not going to be moving on unless they particularly want to. The tenants want to recognise that we're doing things about climate change. There's a very big push about decarbonising our homes, a very management-y speak word, but trying to push that forward. Building new homes as well. We know there are lots of people who need housing. Everybody has needed housing at some point during their lives, and we need to be able to deliver those houses. There's a particularly big issue with homelessness at the moment. We need to be able to help with that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, delivering fantastic services. So when you want a service, we deliver it. So that's what I'd like to achieve. Get all of those done, I'll be happy.
Well, you've partly answered some of the next question, because I was going to ask you, what are the main challenges facing the housing sector at the moment?
Do you know, I can't remember a time where there hasn't been challenges. I can't remember a time where we've ever sat back and thought, tell you what, it's not much we've got to worry about at the moment. There's always been challenges, but there just seem to be quite a lot of biggies at the moment. I mean, one of the first ones, as I mentioned, is this decarbonisation agenda, trying to make our properties, our communities and our business itself climate friendly. So, there's a lot of big changes. There's a lot of focus at the moment on things like gas boilers and stuff like that. And actually, should we be investing a lot into making our properties and your homes more climate friendly? So that's a huge one. Affordability is a big issue. We want to deliver services. We want to be able to provide the things you want, but they cost. Everything we do is paid for by the rent that comes in. There isn't any other money anywhere else. So to deliver services, we've got to charge rent, and we've got to make sure that what you're getting is good value for money, that none of that is wasted, and therefore our rents become unaffordable. Welfare reform, and we've been talking about that for 10, 12 years, probably longer now. But the fact that we're still moving across to universal credit, and there's a lot of challenges for tenants to be able to do that. There's a lot of challenges for us to make sure we can still get that rental income in to be able to deliver services. And then, of course, the big one is recovering from the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, there are huge issues around that. We're changing the way we're working. There's a lot of tenants and communities are changing the way they operate, the way they are. There's a lot of fear out there. So there's some huge challenges going on. But I would also say, I reckon if you ask me in 10 years, I'm not going to sit there and go, tell you what, there's no challenges now. It's great. It's fantastic. There's always going to be challenges.
There's always, yeah.
Different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've answered the next question, because it was going to be, how do you plan to tackle these challenges?
Well, I would go back to what I said earlier. And it might sound cheesy, but you know me, and I really am genuine about this. It's all about involving tenants. You look at all of those challenges I've just listed. Decarbonisation, that is totally about engaging with tenants and talking about tenants about how we do that. It's not something that we can just say, tell you what, Ros, we're going to come in and decarb your house next week. You know, don't worry about it. You just carry on. Of course, that's not going to happen. It's got to be about talking to tenants about how that's going to happen, what that means for you, what do you want, how do you want it to operate,
what it costs,
what it costs, the impact of it. Is it what does that actually mean for you? What elements of it do you want? What can we do to get the barriers? All of that involves talking to tenants, engaging tenants. Affordability, that's all about how much rent you pay, what services you want. Again, everything is about talking to tenants and engaging with tenants. Welfare reform, for those who are impacted by it, it's all about talking to tenants. COVID, responding to that, you know, those are the challenges I mentioned. All of those are about tenants. And so the simple answer, I say simple in inverted commas, the simple answer is engaging with tenants.
I agree with you.
We'll get through them.
Well, pandemic has caused chaos. How has the pandemic changed things for Newydd and the customers? You know, have you had a lot of big changes? Bound to have, as regards being in touch with the tenants.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's huge changes. I mean, you would probably tell me better than I would about the impact on tenants itself, but the obvious ones for us are job losses, furlough, fear about the future, communities potentially, you know, people starting to do all the curtain twitching. There's been a lot of, you know, so-and-so's had more than 3 people around their house and all of that kind of stuff. So communities are probably in a very different way than they used to be. A lot of community engagement has not been able to happen. So, you know, we've all been stuck in our homes, haven't we? And there's been, I don't know, there's some aspects of community have been great. You probably your immediate neighbours. I've certainly got to know my immediate neighbours here a lot more than I would have before. But then from a sort of wider community issue, that's not been happening for a long time. Well, for what we over 18 months, 2 years it's coming up to now.
It's the overall keeping in touch with them, isn't it?
Keeping in touch.
Knowing about their worries and the financial and how the rent's being paid and issues like that.
Tenants have been brilliant with Newydd, and the rent has been paid, and that was one of the biggest fears starting off was, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, people are just going to be like concentrating on other priorities, and there'll be issues with the rent, but the rent has been paid. That's been great. But engagement, you know, imagine us 2 years ago saying, I tell you what, let's not meet in person next time, let's have a chat on camera. We would have gone, no, absolutely not.
No.
And likewise, from a Newydd point of view, 2 years ago, we would regularly, well, not regularly, occasionally get staff members saying, can I work from home? And we'd be like, really? No, you know, you should be in the office. Work is in the office, coming in the office. Now, we're totally changed. We're all working at home, and we're likely to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. We will have an office, but the office is really about meeting and engaging. You know, we will probably meet in the office. We'll see you in the office. But that sort of day of you get up in the morning, you, in my case, cycle into the office and work there all day and then cycle home at the end of it. That's gone. That's all changed. So huge impacts. I think relationships with tenants as well. At the moment, as the pandemic's going on, there's still a lot of people that are very nervous.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable. Don't particularly want people to come into their houses, totally understandably. So, I mean, the impact has been absolutely huge. And
It's affected me. I'm one of your tenants that it really affected.
Yeah.
The pandemic.
Well, that's it. There's a lot of mental health impact.
And I've spoken to a lot of people on the phone, and they were quite safe in their houses.
Yeah.
And in the end, you become so used to your house, you don't want to go out.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Trying to get people out now.
Yeah.
Safely.
And I think one of the things we're very concerned about from staff and tenants, from everybody, because everybody's been impacted by this, is sort of after effects as well. Exactly that. Do people still want to go out? Does the thought of standing in a crowded room with 60 other tenants that we would have not even
thought about?
My middle daughter, she hasn't been to school since it started and she won't go back. She's petrified of going out.
It's hard, isn't it? It's
hard.
Totally understandable. But I also wonder what the fear factor is going to be, because the media only needs to say, oh look, there's another variant come out, and people are going to be panicking. What's going to happen? Be in lockdown again, and we're going to have to go out and desperately quickly get to the shops. It's going to be a very, very different world. And I mean, as I say, the sort of leveling thing is we're all in it together, and we'll all try and find our way through it together. But the impact is phenomenal.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, if we go out, she's petrified. We got to come in as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Like I said, she's 15, bless her. And when I spoke to the doctor, the number of cases they've had with younger children as well as older is phenomenal. It's
time to pick up. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's amazing is I saw on the news the other day, I think it was at the beginning of this week or the beginning of last week, that nightclubs opened in England. And you sort of saw pictures of nightclubs filled with people all
queuing outside to go in.
Yeah. Watched Live Aid the other day, or bits of Live Aid, and watching those huge crowds of 100,000 people all in one place.
It's about decisions now, isn't it? Because I've been invited out Friday night by a few friends because the local pub is open.
Oh yeah.
And it's a big debate whether to go. Because it's being inside that bothers me.
Yeah.
If it's outside, yes.
And you almost get to this stage, don't you, where you want to wear something that is going to say, give me space, I'm nervous. We've talked about it slightly flippantly, but talked about having in the office, having sort of lanyards around your neck, sort of saying either, can you keep away, please, because I'm really nervous. No, I don't mind, I'm okay. You can come up and approach me and talk to me. And you think, wow, you just wouldn't imagine something like that 2 years ago.
No, you wouldn't hesitate.
No.
But there you are.
That's it. So why do you think it's important to include tenants in future services, improvements and delivery?
Well, as I said above, everything that we do is about tenants and involves tenants. So there is no way that we're going to sit and be, we will tell you what we are going to impose on you. Do you know, when I started out in housing, which would have been late 80s, early 90s, there was still a lot of that, particularly in a local authority, a lot of a sort of a belief that we are the Victorian landlord and we will tell you how to run your lives and expect you, and we couldn't be further away from that now. No, absolutely. Tenants need to be involved in everything we do, giving us feedback, telling us the way to deliver stuff. You've been involved with us for years and years and years. You know that. We're committed to that. And I think the crucial thing for me is getting the message across. It's genuine. I think when, as I say, you go back to the 90s, there was very much a feeling of let's get tenants engaged. And I remember going to a meeting where a director of housing probably, sat in the meeting, tenants the opposite side of the table. And he sort of opened a book and said, right, I'm going to go through all the things that we're going to be doing to your houses now. This is the planned maintenance program. We're going to put new roofs on, we're going to put all of this kind of stuff, which they thought was radical and interesting. And I just remember saying, wow, you're just sitting one side of a table and telling tenants what you're going to do to them. That's not tenant engagement.
No.
That's just inviting a couple of tenants in to hear what you could have sent out in a newsletter.
Yeah.
So for me, it's actually engaging, talking, doing what Scrutiny do best, which is, talking about services, finding out what people want, discussing them, and then coming back and telling us the best way to deliver those services. So 120% committed to it.
Right. Well, we've enjoyed the Scrutiny, and it's been going on for some years now. And I think more and more people have got to know us, especially in the community. And we try to give lots of information to Newydd, lots of feedback. What do you see the future of the Scrutiny, the tenants?
Well, this is really important to me. As you know, I've seen Scrutiny as totally independent for its duration. So I'm very loath to sort of suggest that I would tell you what you should be doing. You've always told me what you should be doing, and I'm very happy with that. And that's absolutely the way it should continue. Scrutiny decides its direction. Scrutiny decides the way forward, and has done a fantastic job in delivering that over, what is it now, 12 years, I think, at least, the Scrutiny Group?
That'll be this year.
Yeah. So long may that continue, and long may you carry on telling me what I need to get sorted to improve the services. I mean, the one thing I think for me that is a standout for Scrutiny is the ability to get other tenants involved. As I suggested, there is a sort of almost a view, I suppose, that if we get involved with Newydd, does that mean we've got to come into Newydd's offices, sit in a boardroom, and then have presentations from me or from other staff members, and then you all go home? So I think there's a view there's an opportunity certainly for Scrutiny to engage directly with tenants. So tenants talking to tenants, and I don't feel that they've got to come and talk to me, and I'm just going to go, no, that's not going to happen, or whatever. I think tenants will engage very well with Scrutiny. So there's a real opportunity, which is why I think it's brilliant that you run the conferences, that you run the tenant engagement, basically. So tenants are coming to talk to you about their services. They're not having to come to some stuffy guy in a suit and tie or staff member somewhere. By the way, I never wear a suit and tie, so I don't know why I ever mentioned that.
I think Jason has got a little bit easier for the Scrutiny Group to engage with the tenants because we've stuck to it, and they've seen outcomes. They've definitely seen it. So I think it's easiest for us because when they do tell us things and we bring it to the table to your attention, if something's done, then they really, really trust what's going on. Well, and although it's slower, although the tenant involvement has been slow, it's been genuine.
Yeah,
and it's stayed there.
Yeah, I could list loads of massive changes in the organisation because of tenant scrutiny. The fact that we've got our NML service, the maintenance service, in-house, that was because said,
you got the money savings.
Move away from contractors as well, and get a better service.
You've improved so much within the services for them to relate to and to get hold of. It's been made easier. I think Scott done a great job.
Yeah. The outcomes that Scrutiny has is phenomenal over those years. I mean, customer services team, that was set up because of Scrutiny.
Fabulous, yeah.
So there is so much that Scrutiny has delivered, and I think you're absolutely right. I think tenants see that and think, well, we can get stuff done, and it's tenants talking to tenants, which is great. And you lot will hold us to account because you go to board and tell the board members whether we've done what you've asked us to do or not. So absolutely.
And we can always go back to things as well. I've continually telling tenants, if you don't hear anything, please get back. The more and more I speak to tenants, the more and more feeling at ease.
I mean, going back to your question, what do I see as the future in tenant scrutiny? I'll probably still be asking you what you see the future as tenant scrutiny in all the future.
I would love tenant scrutiny just to be there for life. you know, because I think it's important. It's really important. Tenants have made the breakthrough. Landlords have come together with the tenants. There is a mutual agreement now with tenants and landlords,
Yeah.
but that has to be upheld. You know, it has to keep going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So my view for Scrutiny is to see it as forever, to try and encourage more and more to see what we're doing, and to really get interested in it, because it is interesting.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
all interesting. I love it. I
I do.
absolutely love my time in Scrutiny.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to stay here for a while more. And I'm hoping to see new tenants be interested and coming into it to take over for when I've got to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. And we are immensely supportive of it, and long may it continue.
That's
Good.
it.
Thank you.
So where do you see Newydd in 5 years' time?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And kind of suppose I've answered it in the previous ones. I mean, I would like tenants to feel safe, feel secure, feel supported, feel they're receiving an excellent service, and for our local authorities also to recognise that we're assisting them in addressing the need for housing and being able to address homelessness and all of the other big policy topics that are going on at the moment. We are currently developing a new corporate plan, which will start from April 2022. We'll be involving you an awful lot along the way about what do you want, how do you see the organisation going forward. We've had a lot of tenant involvement already. We've got a lot of feedback from the surveys. We've got a lot of feedback from your reviews about what we need to do. And as I mentioned earlier, the feedback I've had from tenants is about basically feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling supported, getting a good service, and yeah, delivering all of those things. Will I do them in 5 years' time? I doubt we'll get there in 5 years and go, there we are, job done, sorted. I imagine it'll be a journey, but hopefully we'll be in a better place and improving. And hopefully we won't. Well, I don't know. Will we be doing virtual meetings like this? Don't know. Hopefully we'll have gone back to some form of normality.
Yeah, hopefully not. But still, this has been a godsend.
Yeah.
No, it's been great. I mean, one thing from my point of view is that from a tenant involvement point of view, obviously virtual like this, just endless options. You know, a lot of people might have said before, I don't want to come to Corriton office at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday to talk to you. But no, it could be now. It doesn't matter where you are. Just switch on like we did, switch on at 10:30.
Yes.
And we're all in different places. We can really engage with Newtown as well. I think that's great. There's always been a geographical distance between Newtown and the rest of the stock down here. So it's a real opportunity to engage with all of our tenants and get people involved this way, as long as they're comfortable with using video systems. But it works very well. It works better than I could have imagined. And as I say, we've gone back 2 years and said, should we do this using our computers? We would have also all fallen about laughing, saying that's not going to happen, not in a million years.
Yeah.
And now look at us.
I never thought I'd be doing this. Mind you, I'm not doing it properly, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Thank you, Jason, once again for your time.
No problem. Enjoyed it as always.
Thank you so much.
And we'll have another one sometime soon.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully.
Great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.